There was there were endless instances yesterday during the first day of questions being asked of Joe Biden's Supreme Court nominee, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, examples of bizarre, inappropriate, and cartoonishly odd questions asked of her. And I'm going to show you some of them. Now, before we look at the first one, and the first one's going to be Lindsey Graham asking the judge to rate her level of religiosity. I think it's important to understand that in some general sense, these hearings are basically a sideshow. 99% of the time, every senator has already decided how they're going to vote on the nomination. They already know the answers to the questions that they're asking. And typically you will see senators from the party that nominated the candidate, the nominee, just throw what we call throwing bouquets at each other, praise, talk to us about how great your parents are, stuff like that. And then those in the opposite party will ask antagonistic questions. Now, there are substantive antagonistic questions. An example would be, if I had to say who was the best Republican yesterday in terms of asking questions, it was Ben Sasse. They were respectful questions that seemed material to the role of being a Supreme Court justice. Lindsey Graham, Marsha Blackburn, Ted Cruz, an absolute and total joke. Let's start with the first clip. Here's Lindsey Graham asking, what religion are you and how religious are you?
What faith are you, by the way?
Senator, I am Protestant.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Non-denominational.
Okay. Could you fairly judge a Catholic?
Senator, I have a record of
I think the answer would be yes.
Judging everyone.
I believe you can. I'm just asking.
And by the way, every Republican senator other than Ben Sasse relentlessly interrupting Judge Jackson. Relentlessly.
This question because how important is your faith to you?
Senator, personally, my faith is very important. But as you know, there's no religious test in the Constitution under Article 6.
How important is your faith to you? Later asking her to rate her religiosity from 1 to 10. It's 2022, guys. It is 2022. And Lindsey Graham is asking this question during a Supreme Court hearing. Ted Cruz making a mockery of the entire hearing by asking about racist babies.
Do you agree with this book that is being taught with kids that babies are racist?
Senator.
The pause is real.
I do not believe that any child should be made to feel as though they are racist or though they are not valued or though they are less than, that they are victims, that they are oppressors. I don't believe in any of that.
Now, importantly, these are not issues on which a Supreme Court justice normally has to have an opinion. I mean, it is not really for a lawyer or judge to determine whether babies are racist. It's not a particular topic I've thought about too much. But if I wanted an answer to it, I wouldn't go to a Supreme Court justice. Marsha Blackburn, maybe the most weaponized of all of the Republican senators on the Judiciary Committee, asks, are there differences between men and women? Again, Supreme Court justice? What?
Do you agree with Justice Ginsburg that there are physical differences between men and women that are enduring?
Senator, respectfully, I am not familiar with that particular quote or case, so it's hard for me to comment as to what.
Now, that was another theme where Republican senators would say, Judge Jackson, are you familiar with this book and then this article about the book? No, I've never read the book and I've never read the article. Okay, which of the two do you agree with? The entire day. Here's one more clip of Marsha Blackburn asking, can you define woman?
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition? No,
Yeah,
I can't.
you can't?
Not in
Okay.
this context.
So you
I'm not a
believe the
biologist.
meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Now, this rings very hits close to home for me, because when I was on the Jesse Lee Peterson show out in California a couple years ago, he asked me to define man. He said, "What is a man?" And I said, "I do politics. I don't do definitions. I'm not the dictionary." And it was like this all day. Now, interestingly, despite all of the qualifications of Judge Jackson, last night Tucker Carlson on Fox News was still wondering, where are Judge Jackson's LSAT scores?
Legal minds. One way to know, one indication would be her LSAT scores. The LSAT is not a knowledge test. It measures logic and reasoning ability, and no
Right.
one doubts it's an accurate measure of those things, which predict legal skills. And that's why top law schools have long used that test. So how did Ketanji Brown Jackson do in the LSAT? So
And by the way, Ketanji, guys, I mean, listen, for years, it's not Kamala, it's Camilla, Kamala, et cetera, et cetera. And now in the last day, I've heard from these right wingers, Ketanji, which is not her name, Ketanya, and a whole bunch of others. At what point do we wonder whether they're doing it on purpose? And I don't know the answer. So Tucker remains concerned about the LSAT scores. Humiliation, complete and total humiliation from these right wingers. And by every sensible estimation, Judge Jackson will have no problem getting on the court. Let me know your thoughts. Find me on Twitter at dpacman. One of our sponsors is called Privacy. Privacy is a totally free service that I've been using for years. Privacy lets me create virtual payment cards with one click, and when I use the virtual card, the money is taken out of my bank account. You can create multiple cards, delete them, freeze them, set a spending limit on them. Let's say I'm signing up for a free trial and it requires a credit card. Privacy will autofill a virtual card number, and then after signing up, I can delete that virtual card. So I know I'm not going to be charged again. Something really useful and very practical. Or let's say I'm ordering food over the phone, but I left my wallet somewhere. I don't have my real credit card on me. I can use a virtual card on my Privacy mobile app. But really the best part is you're not out there exposing your real credit card number, so you're not as susceptible to data breaches and identity theft. Privacy is a totally free service, and you'll get $5 to spend when you go to privacy.com/Pacman. The link is right underneath this video.